Today is brought to you by the number 5. We are in the 5th line of gate 18, working on what has been spoiled, the gate of correction, and the 5th line is called therapy. Most therapy, most experimental therapy in the late 20th century or so, and even up to today, it's really about turning people's worlds around, shaking them up, giving them an upheaval, trying to straighten them out, finding out what needs to be corrected. And if you look at someone's life closely enough, with that in mind, you're always going to find something that needs to be corrected. The 5th line is a very important line. We have a collective process, of course. The 5th line is a universalization line. This is universalized collective processes. It's the ultimate of what the hexagram is about. Remember, very often Ra used to say that a hexagram is really only made up of 5 lines. The 6th line is sitting on top. It's not really that involved in the process of the hexagram. The 5th line brings it to its point of completion almost. The interesting thing about this is that when you look at what this line says, you realize that what the correction represents is that it can be of enormous value, or it can make you very ill. That is what it's saying. In the lifetime learning, we have the strength to recognize a problem and to accept that it is beyond one's power to solve it alone. This is a collective process. This is the only place, actually, in the 384 lines where the word therapy exists. It has a lot to do with what we call our therapeutic sciences or the work that is done in society. It's a classic 5th line position. You wait for the right opportunity, you wait for that crisis. It has to be practical with the provision that you cannot do it alone. You have to wait for those people to call you. And this is the call of the collective to correct. And that doesn't mean that the correction is necessary or useful or even valuable. And this is where we find the cross of upheaval. And after the upheaval, you may have to go all the way back to ground zero again to straighten everything out. But the upheaval is there to test the strength and the authority of the pattern that exists. The exaltation says the wisdom to both seek and provide guidance, the potential for correction and judgment through relationships. All the way through this 18th gate, we hear about this, finding allies or finding someone to help, or who do we work with, all the way through, more than almost any other gate, I think. And although it is collective, of course, and there's always that need to share, and sharing implies an other, the 18th gate really needs that other. It needs its allies. It cannot do this correction stuff on its own. It is with working together with the other that we find the capacity to be clear in what is of value to the collective and therefore is ultimately very healthy. Ra said that this line can actually be quite unstable. It's about correcting the other. The 5th line knows that, apart from the gate being there, there is also a stream, there is also a circuit, and it wants to correct others, and it needs correction as well. This is part of its process. That correction is rooted in relationships. In the detriment, it says, the mental patient, chronic instability and potential madness, where relationships cannot assist in correction, the potential of mental instability. You can imagine this is a nice line to read to somebody when you've got an analysis to do. Notice it says in the line where relationships cannot. It doesn't say whether they can, it says where they cannot. And that leads to instability. And the thing to recognize about this transpersonal line is this very transpersonal collective process. It's saying that the other matters more than anything else. And relationships with the other, as we've heard again and again, they are always based on how you enter in. Where would the therapist be without their crazy patient? They both have the same line here. The therapist and their patient are the same. Ra said he seldom met a therapist who was saner than their patients. simply doesn't work that way. My sister was a psychotherapist for years. It seldom works that way. They are simply, subjectively, relatively nuts, just in different ways. They are exactly the same and mirrors of each other, and that mirror is here in this line of therapy. Funny, isn't it? So many therapists, and this is from the experience with my sister. She started off going to a psychotherapist, so seeing the need to be corrected herself, and then reversing that and putting it out in a need to correct others. And for years, when she became a psychotherapist, she was always trying to correct all of us. So many of our conversations with her would start off with, "How does that make you feel?" And it's, yeah, it often didn't go well. There is a need within this line. I don't know if she had this line or this gate. I don't know much about her birth time. I know she's a manifestor all day, an emotional manifestor all day, but I don't know much else about her because I don't know her exact time. Anyway, I digress. This is the need within gate 18 on the fifth line on one side to correct the unstable and the need of the unstable to be corrected on both sides. This is all built into this fifth line. The nature of this hexagram in the end, it's all about the protection of fundamental human rights, to find a common ground in which it is possible for us to have a secure pattern with which we can live in the future so that we can evolve safely as a species. It's all about finding solutions, and that's what the fifth line wants to do. It wants to bring its practical solutions. And again, we have that continuity with going into gate 48 next, which is also all those practical solutions hiding in its well, just waiting to be pulled out of the depths. But here we've got someone who is always ready to correct the other. They're not always ready to correct themselves. No, in the detriment, you have the other that is waiting for correction, but they're all in the same bag, really. You can never know who's for you until you're living out your type, your definition, and your authority. That's human design. Those three things, three things, there you go, three things are the basis of human design. And the moment you can live that out, then any one of these lines operates properly. Here, there's no madness when you're with the right people. There's no instability when you're with the right people. And of course, for the fifth line, that means that they have to be very careful about not being seduced instead of being the seducer. They have to be very careful about that call to maintain the integrity of their reputation. So the grounding, it comes in the 17.5 with the line, "No man is an island." Both the 17 and the 18, both collective. Collective is about sharing. It needs the other. This is so clear. It's clear from this line. It's also clear from therapy, as we were just looking at. Therapy usually involves someone else, after all, somewhere down the line. And it's good to be reminded now and then that we don't have to do everything on our own. So Neptune moves into gate 36 today. It's a retrograde movement. The innocence that has been veiled while Neptune has been in gate 25 is revealed. And we now lose our ability to see crisis clearly again. The moon went into gate 64 at 9:33 this morning, the gate of confusion in the head center, leading us into the realization of our confusion, the rationalizing of it in gate 47 in the Ajna at 20:55. These two gates making a channel, giving us the opportunity as the 64 moves into the 47 to make sense of the confusion, to find the pearls of wisdom in the oysters of experience. And gate 6, tomorrow morning at 8:19, the gate of friction and conflict, both of which are necessary components of life. Nothing in the wheel is there without its reason. This is a gate in the solar plexus. It's the gate that generates all the emotional waves that we can experience. And it is also the gate that is associated with the pH of our body, creating the correct correct balance and maintaining essential boundaries within the body, within the system. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much for joining me for this very interesting journey through Gate 18. I will see you for the 6th line tomorrow. Go gently.